In the quiet, fog-draped highways of 1950s America, a strange phenomenon began to spread, one whispered from town to town, passed along by truckers, cab drivers, and late-night radio shows. It was the age of drive-ins, jukeboxes, and polished Cadillacs. But along the winding roads and shadowed intersections, drivers were encountering something far from nostalgic. They were picking up hitchhikers who were never truly there. These weren't your typical roadside wanderers. They were well-dressed, polite, quiet, sometimes young women in white gowns, sometimes soldiers returning home. They'd step into the car, share a short conversation, then vanish without warning, leaving behind only confusion, chills, and unanswered questions. Some say it was the golden age of the American highway, more cars, more late-night travel, and more long stretches of lonely roads. They claim memory is unreliable, especially when mixed with fear, exhaustion, or alcohol. They behave normally, though quietly. They give an address or destination. They vanish before arriving. The location turns out to be a grave, a site of a past tragedy, or a home of grieving relatives. Whether it's the infamous Resurrection Mary in Illinois or the nameless soldier outside Dallas, the ghostly routine remains the same. But here's the thing, many of these accounts come from seemingly normal people. Similar stories have emerged in the 70s, 90s, and even recently, often near sites of tragic accidents. Technology might change, but the figures on the road remain. Some even say dashcams have started capturing brief flashes, blurs of movement that vanish upon review. Churchgoers, businessmen, veterans, people with no history of delusions or ghost stories. And many of their reports share uncanny similarities, even decades apart and miles away from each other. It was a time when people trusted strangers, when picking up hitchhikers was common courtesy. But others believe something darker was at play. Some paranormal researchers suggest that sudden or violent deaths, especially those that happen on or near roads, can trap spirits in a kind of limbo. These ghostly hitchhikers may not even know they're dead. They're simply trying to finish their journey. Others believe these are residual hauntings, ghosts stuck repeating their final moments like a loop in time. Every night they walk the same road, enter the same car, and disappear at the same spot. A man was driving home late from a studio job in Hollywood when he saw a blonde woman in a blue dress, standing at a bend in the road with her thumb out. He picked her up. She said her car had broken down and she just needed to get to her apartment a few miles away. He remembered her perfume, her voice. She was charming and calm, even as the city lights faded behind them. As they neared her apartment complex, she gave him a building number, but when he turned to ask which floor, she was gone. The passenger seat was empty. He checked the address anyway and found a doorman on duty. The man described the woman he'd given a ride to. The doorman's expression changed. "That sounds like Lydia," he said quietly. "But she died in a crash 10 years ago. On that very curve where you picked her up." It was the early 1950s, and a man named Jerry was driving home late after a dance. Just outside the city, along Archer Avenue, he noticed a young woman walking alone on the side of the road. She looked lost, shivering in the cold night, wearing a vintage white dress. He pulled over and offered her a ride. She accepted with a nod and a soft, "Thank you," slipping into the back seat. They made small talk. She was quiet but polite. When he asked where she was going, she simply said, "Resurrection." Thinking it was a nearby street or perhaps a church, he drove on. As they neared the cemetery gates, he glanced into the rearview mirror and she was gone. No sound, no door opening. Just gone. Jerry was so disturbed he returned the next day, walking through the cemetery. There he found a headstone that made his blood run cold. The name and face etched into the stone matched the woman he had picked up the night before. She had died in a car crash years earlier, just a few miles from that very road. Since then, Countless others have claimed to see the same girl, now dubbed Resurrection Mary, always walking alone, always disappearing by the gates. One of the most enduring and eerie accounts comes from Chicago, Illinois, near the famed Resurrection Cemetery. Reports came in from drivers across the southern states, especially in Texas and Georgia, of young soldiers asking for rides home. One story tells of a man who picked up a quiet hitchhiker just outside Dallas. The soldier was clean-cut, with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He spoke kindly, said he was finally going home after years overseas. The driver offered to take him all the way, but as they neared the address he gave, the man turned to speak and found the seat beside him empty. When the driver knocked on the door of the home, an elderly couple answered. He explained that he had been giving their son a ride. Their faces went pale. "Our son died in the war," they said, 6 years ago. The man left in stunned silence, unable to explain what had happened. The soldier never asked for money, never asked for food. He just wanted to go home. During the early 1950s, another kind of phantom traveler began to appear, one dressed in uniform. In the hills near Mulholland Drive in California, another story surfaced, one that still circulates among locals. Why were these sightings so prominent during the 1950s? Of course, skeptics argue these stories are just urban legends crafted over campfires or exaggerated in roadside diners. Phantom hitchhiker stories follow a chillingly familiar pattern. A person is picked up on a road, often at night. While the 1950s were the peak of these tales, phantom hitchhiker sightings didn't stop with the era of diners and doo-wop. So the next time you're driving down a quiet stretch of road, and you see someone standing by the side, think twice. Not every hitchhiker wants to get somewhere. Some are just trying to find their way home again and again. And if one ever disappears from your backseat, don't be afraid. You're not the first, and you won't be the last.